Hey everyone, welcome to Barter Hordes. My name is Robert. I should start with an apology for last week. I've been trying to be very consistent on posting every Friday. If I don't post anything else, I like to post a Friday Reads video. And to be honest, the last couple of weeks, talking about books has not been high on my priority list. My reading has not been all that pleasurable recently, and with everything else going on in the world, I just have not really been in the mood to talk about books. And so last week I just took the week off. I almost did it again today, but I don't want to just disappear from my channel either and send the wrong message that I'm done with BookTube. That's not it at all. Right now I'm just in a funk, and I have been for several weeks now, partially about obviously the pandemic and quarantine. I'm in week 12 now of my quarantine here by myself at home, which has gotten to me a little bit, I freely admit. I'm not a hugely social person in person. I don't spend a lot of time with other people by choice. But 12 weeks without really any contact with anybody other than my physician and my pharmacist through the drive-through window has played on my head a little bit. Fortunately, I have some great online connections that I've had lots of opportunities to talk to people, if electronically, but it hasn't been enough to keep me from going into the dumps. Many of you asked, and I thank you for your kind thoughts about my back problems. I did have a doctor's appointment a week ago, and he thought that perhaps it's not a back problem at all, but it might be kidney stones. I have had some problems with kidney functions in the past, minor problems, but the blood work this time showed that my kidney function is looking better and better over the last several months, and there was no indication that kidney stones are the issue. So I'm kind of back to square one with back pain with no explanation. And so I'm not riding my bike, which always gives me a mental health hit when I don't get any exercise. It's even painful sometimes to walk up and down the stairs to go outside. I just get these really random spasms that are not predictable in any way. Some days I feel pretty good, and the next day I'm doubled over in pain and no rhyme or reason why. So that hasn't helped my frame of mind either. But like I said, I didn't want to go 3 weeks without a video, so I decided I would go ahead and post a little catch-up today, even if it's not going to be that much about books. So if you're only here for book talk, this is probably one that you might want to skip. I have been reading. I've still been reading on average 3 books a week up until yesterday. I finished a group of 3 books yesterday, and I haven't started anything since then. And that's extremely rare for me. Usually the minute I drop one book, I pick up another one to fill its place. But since I finished those, I haven't started anything new, and I'm not sure what I want to read next is part of the problem. I have finished the 48 books that are quarterfinalists for the BookTube Prize. That was my big goal, to have all of those 48 books read by the end of the quarterfinals. So if I have to come in as an emergency judge in any group, I can just go rank the books. I've already read them. So that's accomplished. I still have 21 titles of the original 96 that I have not read, but they're already eliminated from the prize, so there's absolutely no hurry to get to them. I would like to have them read by the end of the prize at the end of September, but if I don't make it, it doesn't affect anything other than my own crazy goals. So on my BookTube Prize challenge, I'm 75 books down, 21 books to go. But the important thing is all the books that are still active in the prize, I have now read. And that might be partly why I'm a little bit depressed with my reading, is I read an awful lot of nonfiction in a row that I just did not really care for. I like nonfiction. I don't like it as much as fiction. But certain types of nonfiction just don't seem to gel with me. I have realized that unless a memoir is about some specific event or period of time that I really get interested in. A general memoir about somebody's life, I really don't enjoy much. Sean from Sean the Book Maniac talks about how there's a lot of navel gazing going on, and that's the feeling I get too. I'm not that interested in watching people hyper analyze their own lives. I'm just not. So some of those have not sat well with me. But I did finish, like I said, I finished the 48 books for the quarterfinals. And then this last week, I picked up a couple of mysteries. I picked up the 10th one in the Louise Penny series. I've been trying to read one a month. And so my May title was the 10th one. And even that was a bit of a disappointment. I loved the last 2 or 3 in the series the best. They were my favorites of the 10 so far. But this one really fell short of the mark for me, and I have since discovered that it fell short of the mark for other Louise Penny fans too. So it's not just me, which is good. And I've heard that she goes right back to her great books, starting with number 11. So I'm not giving up on the series by any means, and it was still probably a 3.5 or a 4-star read. But there were just some things that were different and out of character in this series that I didn't think worked that well. And then I also finished Long Bright River, which I had an arc of all the way from last summer when it was a huge buzz book. I guess it came out in January. And I didn't really care much for it either, even though everybody seems to love that book. I just thought the prose was so stiff and so wooden that I really had a hard time reading some of it. And I just thought the story was okay. It wasn't bad. It wasn't great. So I have not been on a good run with my book selections recently. Now that I've finished the 48 for the Book 2 prize, I'm not sure what I'm going to tackle next. I forgot one. I meant to mention that this goes to my backlist project. I finally picked up the next one for my backlist project, which was A Cure for Dreams by Kaye Gibbons, which I think came out in the 80s. And Kaye Gibbons is a North Carolina writer, which I didn't know at the time I picked it up. And it's set in North Carolina. It's a very quick read. It's set up in relatively short chapters, and each of the chapters doesn't really have a title, but has kind of a description, very much like you see in 18th century British novels. Chapter 25, wherein Jimbo goes to the store, or whatever. And it does that a lot, which they were kind of funny. But it very quickly tells the story of 4 generations of women in this family, going back to the Depression and up to the middle of World War II. And it's a family that settles in rural North Carolina and what extremely small town life for these women is like. And some of it's satire, some of it's just funny. And it was okay. It wasn't great. I don't think that's probably the best book by Kaye Gibbons to read as a representative title from her backlist. Ellen Foster might be a better choice. But it was okay. So I read the next one for my backlist project. The next one I'll be picking up is a collection of short stories by Sandra Cisneros called Woman Hollering Creek. And I have not read that before. I've read Sandra Cisneros before, but I have not read that collection. So that'll be new for me. In terms of other projects, my movie project, I did watch the next film in my movie project, which was the 1982 film, I believe, Sophie's Choice. I think it was 1982, sometime during the 80s. And I have seen this movie before, and it's been a long time, so I had forgotten some of the details, and I absolutely thought it was just terrific. And I'll put my updated top 5 rankings. It slides right up into number 2 slot of the 17 I think I've watched from my list. It gives me a little bit of a feeling of The Great Gatsby, where the narrator is not necessarily the focus of the story, but is kind of like an outside observer who's dragged into the story as a tangential character. His name is Swingo. He's a young man from the Deep South who comes to Brooklyn to become a writer. And he ends up in a rooming house right below the room with Sophie and her lover, Nathan. And Sophie is from Poland. She was in Auschwitz. These are not spoilers. You learn all this right away. She was in Auschwitz. And then gradually over time, Swingo gets Sophie to open up to him and trust him with her story and what her choice was. And so it's just beautiful. And Meryl Streep, my God, she is just the best. And in that movie, she's just so stunningly beautiful. If Meryl Streep had only made Sophie's Choice and Out of Africa, I would still rank her among the greatest actors of our generation. But given all that she's done in addition to those two spectacular movies, there's just no one to touch her. I think for me, and a lot of people disagree because it's subjective, but Meryl Streep and Daniel Day-Lewis are the two best actors in terms of flexibility, in terms of preparation, in terms of their ability to adopt different types of characters. They're the two best actors of our generation, bar none, in my opinion. Other people don't like Daniel Day-Lewis, but I just think he's brilliant. Meryl Streep is just a goddess. So I did see that. The next one in my movie project is The Sound of Music from 1965, I believe, with Julie Andrews. And of course, everybody's seen this. It's on every year at the holidays. And I'm not sure I've seen it all the way through in a decade or two. I see bits and pieces of it every year, and I've watched it all the way through a couple of times. And so that'll be next for me in my movie project. It's a movie I know I'll enjoy, but it's not one that I expect to make my top 5 by the end of this project, although it probably will make the top 5 as of right now. And my other project, well, before I get to my other project, let me tell you what else I've been doing. The one thing that's been giving me joy in the last couple of weeks is K-drama. I have gone back on a deep dive with K-drama again. I started watching it a couple of months ago and got out of the habit of watching it. And then I got pulled back into it when Netflix started putting a lot of K-dramas in its collection here in the United States. And in the last two and a half weeks, I think I've watched 3 or 4 different series, which have been great. The best one by far still has been Itaewon Class, which was the one that brought me back to K-drama. But since that one finished, I've watched my first love, which is kind of a silly romantic comedy, Shakespearean comedy of errors type show. Wasn't my favorite, but it was definitely enjoyable. And then I watched, the last one I watched is When the Camellia Blooms, which is kind of like a police thriller detective / love story. And it was okay. I thought it was the most inconsistent of the ones I've seen recently, but even it was something I looked forward to watching every evening. And I just started, I think I'm 5 episodes into a new one that Mel from Mel's Bookland Adventures recommended called My Mister, which is not on Netflix. It's actually on Viki, which is a free service if you don't mind commercials, or you can buy a commercial-free pass. I forget how much it is for a year. I went ahead and got their 7-day free trial, and I've been watching this new one, which is kind of like a corporate thriller drama. And the first couple of episodes, I just been confused going, who's doing what to whom and why? But now it's starting to make itself clear, and it's interesting. It's fascinating. So the way my days have gone is I spend the mornings drinking coffee, having my quick breakfast, and maybe listening to some podcasts or watching a BookTube video or two. And then usually around noon or 1 o'clock, I start reading, and I read most of the afternoon into the early evening when I have dinner. And then after I finish my reading, whether it's in the early afternoon or in the early evening, then I switch to K-dramas until bedtime. And that's really all I'm doing because I can't get out and ride my bike. I can't do any exercise. And of course, I'm not going anywhere. I'm in such a high-risk group that I am not going to disobey the suggested orders. Even if the stay-at-home order has been lifted and is now just suggested stay-at-home, I'm still not going anywhere until I've been vaccinated because I am going to catch the virus. That's just the way my luck runs. And I'm in such a high-risk group that I probably wouldn't survive the virus if I caught it. And I'm just not going to push that luck. So my hair, as you can tell, is incredibly too long. I'm starting to get the little wings on the side like Polly from The Sopranos. And I'm going a little bit stir crazy at home. The other project that I've been also doing during the daytime, and often while I'm reading, I listen to more of the classical music on my classical music project. And I'll list all of those below for the last couple of weeks, and it's a long list. The one work that I want to feature here isn't necessarily one of my all-time favorite works, although I think it's stunningly beautiful. But it's a problem I've found with this list of orchestral works in this compendium volume that I took the list from. There are almost 500 works on this list. And this is the only work by Richard Wagner on the entire list. And I think that's just a mistake. I think the problem with Wagner's music is so much of it comes from his long operas that people don't see it as orchestral music. But he has long, long passages of pure orchestral music in his operas that are just gorgeous and brilliant. This piece of music isn't actually specifically from an opera. It's the Siegfried Idyll. And Wagner wrote it as a birthday gift for his wife one year. And then about 8 years later, he reorchestrates it for full orchestra and publishes it as the Siegfried Idyll. It's about 25 minutes long, some of the absolutely most gorgeous melodies you'll ever hear. And I'm just heartbroken that that's the only Wagner piece of music on this list, especially given that there are at least 25 Haydn symphonies on the list, all of which sound the same. And I like Haydn, but we didn't need to see the whole catalog on this list. And works by people like Darius Milhaud. You've probably never heard that name. I barely have heard of the name. A French avant-garde composer of stuff that I don't care about. It kind of borrows from jazz, kind of borrows from some other things. But to stack it side by side with Wagner's music and give me more of Milhaud than Wagner, that's an editing mistake in my opinion. But it's my opinion. It's subjective. I love Wagner's music. He was a horrible person, but I loved his music. So that's what I've been doing. I've been listening to a lot of music. I have been reading a lot, but right now I'm not. I hesitate even to say this because the minute I say it, I'm just dooming myself to fall apart. But one of the reasons I'm not anxious to jump into reading right now is I have been doing some work on structure with a potential novel that I've been wanting to write for 10 years now. Who knows if I'll ever actually do it, but it's just driving me crazy that I'm so scared of starting this project. And so I've been going over some of my notes, some of the notes that I used to give my own creative writing students. So it's not like I don't know the process. I just don't know how to get over the paralysis. I never had this problem when I was writing nonfiction. Nonfiction was so much easier for me to attack and start new projects. Both of my books were conceived, researched, and written in under 2 years apiece. This I've been thinking about for almost a decade now and still haven't been able to make myself write an actual paragraph. I've done a lot of planning, done a lot of thinking, done a lot of agonizing, done actually no writing. So I'm hoping to push myself either off a cliff or chain myself to my desk until I actually start writing. Once I get involved in a writing project, I don't get writer's block. I write some things that are terrible and that the next day I have to throw away and start over again, but I still am always able to write once I'm into a project. But my God, starting a fiction project for me has just been terrifying. So that's not helping my mental state right now. So that's where I am. I'm sorry this is long and rambly and not all that book related, but I didn't want to go another week without posting a video. For those of you who are involved in the BookTube Prize, please don't worry, that's not going anywhere. Even if my brain explodes, the BookTube Prize will continue as scheduled. We finish round 2, the quarterfinals, tomorrow. I'm waiting on about 20 to 25 ballots from judges that are due tomorrow at 5 o'clock. And then on Sunday on the BookTube Prize channel, I'll be posting the results of the quarterfinals and the pairings for the semifinals, and I'll start sending out emails to judges with their group assignments. So that's going to continue apace, whether my personal channel falls apart or not. But anyway, that's where my head is. Not a particularly pretty sight these days. bear with me. If you stayed with me all the way to the end of this long, rambly video, bless you. Either you're incredibly bored or you have it on autoplay while you're doing something else and you're not really listening. I will talk to you again this weekend on the BookTube Prize channel for sure, and hopefully on this channel again next week. Bye, everybody.